Hello, everyone. Good evening. We are so happy to have you join us. Thank you so much for taking the time to be able to learn about some important work today. My name is Tahil Sharma, and I'm the Faith Work Director at the National LGBTQ Task Force. And I'm excited to be able to have this collaborative event conversation with the Interfaith Center at Miami University to talk about some important work that is happening on the ground today for LGBTQ plus migrants. It's important for us to consider that in the changing nature of immigration policy and with the uprise in attacks against LGBTQ people around the world, it's very clear that there are some organizations that are doing some valuable work in being able to engage, support, integrate, and help provide some necessary resources to those migrants, to folks who are seeking refuge in countries like the United States. And we have the opportunity to hear about some of that work that's done particularly through Rainbow Railroad. We're very excited at the Interfaith Center and at the task force to be able to partner with Rainbow Railroad again to be able to do this event. This time, we will have the opportunity to make sure that things are recorded properly, as you might see right now. Before we get started and I pass it over to Kendra and Alicia, who are our speakers today, I want to also just let people know of some digital logistics. You'll notice that many of you cannot turn on your cameras or unmute yourselves. And this is to sort of help with the undivided attention that we want to give to our presenters today. There will be an opportunity for you all to ask questions later on. So if any of them do come up at a certain point, please start writing them in the chat or start collecting them, and we'll be sure to have a section for you to ask those questions. But without further ado, I'd like to pass it on over to Kendra to get us started, please.
Thank you, Sahil. I really appreciate you. Hello, everyone. My name is Kendra. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior program officer here at Rainbow Railroad. I come into this work with lived experience as an asylum seeker from Jamaica that was relocated by Rainbow Railroad. I'm based in Virginia, and I'm excited to be hosting this event and being able to share the amazing work we're doing. Here with me as well is Drew. He is also a senior program officer, and he won't be on camera, but he'll be responding to questions in the chat. And I also have Alicia, who is a volunteer with us, who will get to share later down in the presentation about what that experience has been like and answer some questions with you all. So let's get started. I also want to add that we may have some individuals that have requested help for us pop into the conversation. I just want to let them know that at this moment in time, we're unable to answer any questions regarding your case. We understand how serious it might be that you might have questions, but please reach out to your caseworker, as due to confidentiality, we're not able to answer any questions at this moment. Let's begin. So, Rainbow Railroad is an international non-for-profit, and our mission is simple. We help LGBTQI plus people who are fleeing persecution access greater safety. To understand our work, it's important to understand the global landscape. There are about 120 million forcibly displaced people in the world, and that's according to UNHCR's 2024 report. For context, 120 million is larger than the population in every country in the world except 12. It's 1/3 of the US population. To put it simpler, it's 1 in every 69 people on Earth. The number of forcibly displaced people has become increasing every year for the last 12 years. It's truly been a crisis that's happening here. The data on forcibly displaced LGBTQI people is difficult to collect. That's because it's not typically visible to an observer. And it's often not safe for LGBTQI individuals to disclose this data. Technically, we're on a hidden axis of persecution where survival often requires hiding. But if we do some math, 9% of adults in the global survey identify as LGBTQI+. 9% of 120 million people equals to around 10.8 million forcibly displaced LGBTQI+ people. What we also know is that LGBTQI+ people are randomly distributed throughout human population. We're like wildflowers. We appear everywhere. We're in every town, in every city, in every province, in every state, in every country, and on every continent. Where there are people, there are queer and transgender people. Whether it is safe to live openly as a member of our community in all of these places, however, that's a different question. There are over 60 countries around the world where it remains illegal to be LGBTQI plus in one way or another. And punishment includes up to the death penalty. This is a map of such state-sponsored persecution. One thing to note about this map, especially for countries in Africa, is that most of these anti-LGBTQI plus laws are not indigenous to these places. They were forced on them by European colonists and missionaries. Rainbow Railroad is proud to support local activists in many of these countries who are fighting back and trying to remind people that the rich history of gender and sexual diversity is historically existed in these places. But this map isn't the whole story. As we all know, the US has anti-discrimination against LGBTQ plus people, and there's violence, and it exists in countries not represented on this map. As the number of forcibly displaced people overall grows, so too do the number of forcibly displaced LGBTQI plus people reaching out for help. You'll see here where we received over 15,000 requests for help in 2023. That was an 80% increase since 2021. And though there was a slight decrease in 2024, we expect these numbers to remain stable or increase. You'll also see that the regions from which we received the most requests largely correspond to the map of criminalization we saw earlier. But how exactly is Rainbow Railroad responding to the queer forced displacement crisis? At the heart of what we do is our emergency travel support program, which in short helps LGBTQI plus people escape dangerous situations. This could be a safe house, it could be going to a neighboring country or community, or it may involve traveling great distances to seek humanitarian protection in a different part of the world. A number of our other core programs have emerged in our 20-year history to complement this work. We have a cash assistance program, we have partnership development, crisis response, just to name a few. This brings us to the most recent expansion of the organization's work, and this is where we're going to need y'all's help. We have designed our Community of Care program. From 2023 to early 2025, Rainbow Railroad was an implementing partner in the United States Department of State's Welcome Corps program. We were helping to relocate LGBTQI plus refugees. Through this program, we trained LGBTQI plus and allied volunteers and members known as private sponsor groups, like Alicia. The teams were then supported the refugee or refugees in their first 3 months as they got settled by helping them navigate public transportation, registering for English courses, funding, finding permanent housing, and securing full-time employment. President Trump's administration canceled the Welcome Corps program in early 2025. Through that, we decided to come up with community support teams, and this is our newest program. And we've incorporated many of the lessons we learned working with private sponsor groups to design community support teams, or CSTs like we like to call them here. There are volunteers here in the US and Canada who will provide housing support, financial support, community integration service to asylum seekers with funding and technical assistance and oversight by us at Rainbow Railroad. Our focus today, like I said, is on community support teams, and we are actively recruiting. Community support teams consist of 3 or more volunteers and will provide 6 months of financial support assistance provided by Rainbow Railroad, housing assistance and resources, and community integration. Before diving in, I wanted to highlight that there are a few different ways to participate in the CST program. First, the focus of this training and or presentation today is how to form or join a community support team that's made up of 3 or more volunteers. Another way you can help is by offering housing to the newcomers we work with. We have an ongoing Rainbow Housing Drive where volunteers can open their homes for any amount of time. And finally, you can fundraise for a group or groups. The challenge we're seeing here at Rainbow Railroad in creating community support teams are having more individuals to support the newcomers that are finding footing here in the US. There are three main prongs to our approach: financial support, housing assistance, and again, community integration service. As an organization, we're providing $5,000 per client that is given directly to the newcomers over a monthly period. So far, roughly half of the referred clients are experiencing some sort of housing instability and need assistance on that front. Housing may be offered by the CST itself, by another Rainbow Railroad volunteer, or by a community organizer, or by you forming a community support team. We identify initial housing before proposing a match to a CST, just to ensure that individuals have some form of support and are able to begin the process of being a part of a support team. Great. We're trying to make fetch happen. This is our little inside joke. So as a support team, we are focusing on financial and material assistance, where groups help newcomers stretch their cash stipend further by helping to access food pantries, clothing banks, free stores, and other free and low-cost community resources. We're introducing them to Facebook Marketplace that we found can be a treasure on a budget. E is for edification. This may include ESL lessons and getting work authorized once they get work authorization employment. T is for transportation navigation. At some point in time, we've all gotten lost somewhere. So we're helping the newcomer ensure that they can access transportation and figuring out how to use Google Maps and bike lanes. C is for culture and community. What we understand is newcomers coming from overseas don't necessarily want to be introduced to the communities that they're from. But in the instance that they do want to be, this is where you all come in as volunteers to help introduce them to those cultures. And H is for housing and healthcare. To expand on the previous slide, we're talking about having material assistance and technical assistance. And as discussed, we will provide the necessary program funds to the newcomer. The instance that we will provide it to the CST is if our newcomer doesn't have an ID and is unable to receive funds, then the funds will go directly to you as a volunteer. Right now, I want to pause and introduce Alicia, who will talk a bit about what that experience has been like and shed some more light on any questions, concerns you all may have.
Thank you very much. And yes, I have been a volunteer with Rainbow Railroad, supporting two different people back when we were still doing refugees. I was on a team, a private sponsor group that supported a male refugee from Venezuela, and that was in 2024. And then last year, when the switch was to help asylum seekers, we formed a community support team and supported a woman from Honduras. Both times, our community support team was actually a group of us from my church. And our church has opened up a room. We actually turned the minister's office into a bedroom. And so we were able to house our asylee last year at the church, which was very convenient for everyone. And there were 6 of us on the team. And we basically met every week on Zoom to just talk about how things were going, be accountable to what it is we said we were going to do, and just following those fetch guidelines. So we had the housing covered, so that was a big one, because I know that can be very difficult. I have tried to find other people housing in our community outside of Rainbow Railroad. And here in Chicago, it can be very difficult when you don't have a credit history, when you don't have pay stubs. So we have been very lucky to be able to use our church, and we're actually now getting prepared for the next person who's going to move into our church. So we basically, signed her up for English classes at the local community college, helped her get a public transportation fare card, helped her use it. We did get her a bicycle because she did want a bike, but after her first trip out on a bike, she said, no, thank you, which I don't blame her. In the streets of Chicago, it can be a challenge. But we, helped her learn to get around, showed her where the nearest grocery store was, signed her up at the nearest food bank, which she was able to go to once a month. We partnered with another church nearby because we don't have a shower at our church, and so they opened their doors for our asylee to be able to shower there. One of our team members who lived close by also opened up her shower. We also, that same volunteer also opened up her home for laundry, so our asylee would go over to her apartment and do laundry. And then, I was the only Spanish speaker in our group, so I would take her out into the community to free events at the Park District. I took her to the Pride Parade. She came to my house to watch the 4th of July fireworks. We just did as much as we could to make her everyday life as comfortable as possible. Unfortunately, she did have a job, a work permit, an apartment, and everything. And then when Trump came into office and canceled her humanitarian parole, she lost her work permit. And this is happening a lot. People who have lost their temporary protected status or the humanitarian parole, so they may have had a job, but now they're losing their work permits. And so there are, I think, more people in need now. So it changes all the time. You have to keep abreast of what's going on with immigration policy federally, locally, because things change. And we have a very good community here in Chicago for immigrant justice within our government, but also just in our community volunteers. So it's been great to get to work in collaboration with those community organizations, government entities already doing this work. And that has been really helpful for learning about various resources. We want to get her whatever benefits she can, hook her up with health care. And yeah, I think that's about what we did for her, and we're really looking forward. The same team minus one person is moving forward. We've submitted our next application and are now waiting for a match, and we can't wait to do this again.
Thank you so much, Alicia, for sharing. And we're
Mhm.
excited that you guys are doing this again. So, if you've made it this far, we hope you're excited to begin your support journey with us. And here are a few next steps on how to get started. So, first, this is a team effort. So, you'll want to recruit a team of at least 3 people, but you can have up to 10 on your application. Your teammates can be your friends, family, co-worker, church connections, LGBTQI plus community members, anyone you like. The only requirement are that people are legal adults. Second, everyone in the group will need to submit a background check through our vendor, Sterling Volunteers, using our specific link. But if for immigration related reasons you do not feel comfortable with this requirement, you can inform myself or Drew, and we will make a case by case exception on this requirement. For transparency, though, the only thing we're screening for here is convictions for crimes of violence and fraud. Since we're going to be working with a vulnerable population, we want to ensure that, individuals are protected on both sides. 3, each member of the team will need to watch the full CST orientation, which are provided on our website. And four, the team leader will need to complete the application. There's only one application per team on the website, and this can take between 30 to 45 minutes, but you can save it and return to it at any point. And you can also set up an appointment with myself or Drew to review before you submit it. And finally, once you submit your application, each group member will receive a DocuSign that will have or volunteer agreement or confidentiality form and the commitment form. And once that's signed, it'll get reviewed and we'll be able to proceed to our next steps. So just to put it simpler, here's what you can expect. So the application will take 5 minutes to figure out your group name, location, and members, and your group name can be anything. We have Welcome to New York, not Taylor's version. We have New Roots. We have quite a few funny names. They're amazing. Your group information, which will include the name and address of each group member. Housing, optional. You don't have to include housing if you're not able to provide that. Providing the fetch acronyms, so all the fetch items will take 15 minutes, and the programmatic requirements. So the training that's completed beforehand, the background check, and the commitment forms are submitted after. And now is the time where we start our Q&A. If there are any questions that haven't been answered in the chat, now is the time. I will stop sharing my screen and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Kendra and Alicia, for getting to share about the work, what it looks like. Alicia, we've done this presentation once before. So the perspective that you brought in about how you have done that work personally has it brings a new depth to the importance of this work, why it requires everyday people who can get sort of the right community folks together to engage, and to kind of show the simplicity and the creativity that comes with creating community. And how you show that through the work that you've done is something that is really inspiring, and we appreciate you and hope that others on this call can see that as something that's really manageable, something that is really doable, and something that people need because oftentimes they don't know how to engage, and finding community that may not look like you, sound like you, represent you in certain ways, may show up in different ways. So thank you for that, Alicia. That perspective, I think, was an important element that we're happy to add to the presentation this time around. And Kendra, of course, you always do an amazing job with these presentations and really appreciate it. We have some awesome folks that are leaving some questions in the chat. Um, the first couple that are coming up, um, do you assist single moms from the Middle East?
So you can, once it is that you are LGBTQI plus, you can submit a request for help on our website at rainbowrailroad.org, and you'll be able to input all the information and details there, and your case will be handled by a caseworker. And the second part, do you assist trans US citizens wanting to flee unsafe states for Europe or other safer countries? I'm going to call on Drew to answer this particular question because his words are better than mine in explaining this part of it.
I had a feeling you might. Hi, everyone. My name is Drew, he, him pronouns, Senior Program Officer at Rainbow Railroad based in Chicago. So this is a question we get a lot, and it's a little bit of a complicated answer. So we understand that in many states right now, things are pretty grim, especially around access to healthcare for our trans siblings. That being said, the conditions in the United States have not deteriorated so far yet that people would be able to successfully win an asylum claim in other countries. That could change, but typically one of the standards for winning humanitarian relief is showing that there is no place in your country of origin where you can go to be safe. Thankfully, there are still many places in the US that queer and trans people can live openly, authentically, and safely, Chicago being one of them. DC, depending on how you feel about the National Guard, San Francisco, LA, many places where we work with volunteers and with newcomers. And we also know that many of the people we work with abroad, the US might be the only place that they're able to get a visa or the only place that they're able to go and request asylum. So we're trying to hold all of that in tension, right? Like we can't help people seek asylum outside of the US if they are US citizens, because those cases will not be approved for now, thankfully. What we can do and what we often do is help people understand which groups like Rainbow Railroad exist in the United States to help people move state to state. So some of those groups I will list for you right now. Transcontinental Pipeline, which is also an incredible name. They're based in Colorado and they help people mostly relocate to Colorado. Um, Trans Resistance Network and Pink Haven Coalition, another great set of organizations that work very closely together. Um, they, again, can field requests for people seeking relocation assistance. And another group based in the Pacific Northwest is Traction PNW. They mostly operate in that region. There are some additional smaller groups that I'm personally not as familiar with, but those three are pretty big and are all in touch with one another, so are generally a good resource on that front. Um, yeah, anything else you wanted me to say on that front, Kendra?
No, however, you can answer the other question. In what ways do we partner or do mutual aid work with US-based networks that are similar?
Yes. So similar to my last question, um, we have reached out to all of those organizations doing domestic relocation, and we've developed some sort of peer-to-peer referral processes. So if someone comes to us and is asking for those types of resources, but that's not something that we can offer, we'll ask them if it's okay if we pass along their information to one of our referral partners doing that domestic relocation work, and vice versa. So if they get connections from people overseas who need assistance, they can then route people through our request help process, which our team of caseworkers then triage.
Thank you. And
And
then
then
the
oh,
next question is, do your services extend to all states in the US? And do you assist those who already have asylum applications or just those who are yet to apply? So to answer this question, our services expands the entire United States. The difficulty we have though is matching individuals with community support teams. So for example, if we have a newcomer in Virginia and we don't happen to have a community support team in Virginia, it's going to be hard to match someone with a group there, but we do have services available to support individuals. And to answer the second part of that question, we are supporting individuals that have already submitted their asylum applications. Drew, do you want to expound a little bit more on the referral aspect of that, though?
yeah. So this is sort of part two to the answer I gave earlier. Um, we work with LGBTQ legal clinics across the country who are representing LGBTQ asylum seekers, people seeking withholding of removal, protection under the Convention Against Torture, different forms of humanitarian relief that exist for queer and trans folks here. And so those include Immigration Equality, Oasis Legal Services, the National Immigrant Justice Center, Immigration Justice Campaign, and a couple other smaller ones. And so how this process works is that they handle the legal aspects of our clients' cases, and they refer them to us for those sort of community integration and social aspects that so many clients need. Just for background, I used to be an immigration attorney at NIJC on their LGBTQ team. And as an attorney, there was always so much more I wanted to do that I couldn't do because I was the attorney. I had to just represent someone in court. But I could see that, they didn't have community, they were lonely, they didn't know how to get around the city, they felt very isolated. That is what this program exists to address, and what I think is it's doing a really great job because of exactly people like Alicia, who go out of their way to share their like deep, rich knowledge of the city that they live in with someone who has just arrived or who's just gotten out of detention. And that is a total make or break moment in so many people's lives.
Thank you, Drew.
And do you mind if I add something that I wanted to have said earlier? We are helping them, but you also get so much out of it personally. This last person, this young woman, she was only 21, from Honduras. She was just so young, that it just felt really good, kind of take her under my wing and to just give her moral support, and to really feel like we had a connection, a relationship. It felt really good to be able to have that kind of relationship with her. She was more of like a daughter kind of relationship. and I still care about her deeply, and we still talk all the time. So there is a lot that you as a volunteer really get out of it as well in making what can be long-term relationships with people who really need you. At one point, um, she told me that I was more of a mother to her than her real mother because her family did not accept her queerness. And that's one of the reasons she left Honduras. So, you know, what you do for them beyond all the logistics to just be there as a support is hugely important to them and really makes the whole thing worthwhile.
And
Thank
Alicia,
you.
this Q&A is for you too, so jump in whenever.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's another question. For someone who is already receiving legal assistance from Immigration Equality, what other kinds of assistance might Rainbow Railroad provide to them? So we have a couple programs, but because you are already receiving assistance from Immigration Equality, there is a pathway for referral to us, correct, Drew?
Yeah, so we do get referrals from Immigration Equality for the CST program in particular.
Yeah. So Immigration Equality can refer you to us to be partnered with a community support team. And in that partnership, once an application is submitted, if it is that you are approved, then you'll get matched with a support team once available, and you'll get access to the funding and support provided. There is also a way for Immigration Equality to also refer you for our housing and livelihood assistance fund. So you can reach out to your caseworker at Immigration Equality regarding that, and they'll be able to provide some more information and referral to that.
Yeah, and I
Um,
did see a question about CAF, Kendra, so can I answer that?
yeah, sure.
Cool. Yeah, as Kendra mentioned, we have a couple other programs that sort of stand next to the Community Support Teams program. The Housing and Livelihood Assistance Fund is one of them. As Kendra alluded to, that is a microgrant program for LGBTQ asylum seekers. But to receive those microgrants, they're between about 500 and 1,500, depending on the person's need and the amount of funds that we have. They do have to be referred to us from one of our dedicated referral partners. Immigration Equality is one. All of our legal clinic partners are one, and then we also work with some community organizations who are vetted to provide referrals. Um, and then someone had asked about the Community Access Fund, and I apologize that a lot of our titles have both the word community and fund in them. That is confusing. We're working on that. Um, the Community Access Fund is another micro grant program, but that is for organizations, not individuals. And those are grants of up to $10,000 to support projects in the local community that work with LGBTQ asylum seekers, refugees, and other queer and trans migrants. So that is actually open right now. If you are an organization that is interested in applying to that, I will leave the link in the chat. Again, it is called the Community Access Fund. And just to be clear, Kendra and I have no control over that program. We are separate. I did help run it last year, but I'm no longer doing that. But you will see on the application page how to get in touch if you have questions.
And I believe those are our questions. Unless there are any more, you
I,
should be able to raise your hand. But Tahel, over to you.
yeah, I was gonna actually ask a couple questions myself.
Sure, go ahead.
For the volume of folks that you receive applications from, obviously that is a major challenge to be getting, messages from all over the world, and you all do what you can to be able to meet those needs based on the formations of these communities on the ground. Um, one of the questions that I have is what do you find to be sort of the biggest challenge in sort of this kind of community building where people are coming in and finding themselves, being separated from cultural community, religious community, and then finding themselves in the middle of the United States. Alicia, maybe you can answer this in with a specific example, but how have you noticed people making sure that people are able to accommodate to some of those social, religious, and cultural needs?
Well, my feeling is that everybody's different. So we just start with asking them what they're interested in. You know, are you interested in going to church? And we can help you find a church in your language. Our person was not interested in going to church. She was interested in trying to find other young Latina lesbians. And so we worked really hard on trying to do that. It was a bit of a challenge, especially to find any that weren't, just kind of bar related. But we took her to some events, and she did meet some people through the activity she was involved in, which I really always highly recommend that they do the ESL classes in person rather than some people like to do them online or with an app or whatever. But it's such a great opportunity to meet other people who maybe are in your same boat at those ESL classes. So just trying to get them out into the community so they can meet other people. And it's helpful too when you have other Rainbow Railroad teams in your community because we can get together with each other and introduce our asylum seekers to each other. So that's another way that they can get involved.
And I just want to add to, in having conversations with newcomers and also in my own experience, like the culture shock of being able to now be somewhere that I'm able to openly express myself is relief. But it's also understanding there is some trauma with that, like you're coming from a place where you can't hold hands with your partner to now being able to do that and nobody looks at you weird. So just giving the newcomer grace in understanding what they're coming from to know what we're in, and also understanding many of us never got to celebrate a pride in our home countries. In talking with a lot of the newcomers now, a lot of them are excited for June because it's going to be their first time to celebrate Pride. So as a CST, many of them are super excited to help have the newcomers experience Pride for the first time. It's understanding that anything you and I would need to do once we move to somewhere new, it's that and more for the newcomer that we're welcoming. So just keeping that in mind.
Yep, and then I am seeing some questions about just the request for help form. So I've linked it again below. If you are talking to someone or if you are someone who has an active case with Rainbow Railroad, you don't need to submit a new request for help. If you have something that has changed in your case or something has become more urgent, you can actually submit an update directly to our system and to your caseworker. I'm going to show you. There is a little box that will come up in the drop down. Oh, I can't do a screenshot, sorry. But when you click the button on the request for help form that asks, have you ever submitted a request for help to Rainbow Railroad before? If you have, push yes, because then a different form will come up that will allow you to submit an update about your specific case. And that will get to your caseworker faster than if you submit a completely new request. Okay, and I'm seeing that I can text that response as well.
Thank you. Tahil, do you have any more questions?
Yeah. I guess one of the questions that I've asked this to you before Kendra, and I think to you as well, Drew. What has been sort of the shift in immigration policy, and how is it impacting your work right now as you're trying to accept more folks into the country? I think that context is really important for the conversation, and maybe some people don't know that because of the new administration, they have what I would say a different approach to how they understand immigration. And I wanna know what's happening exactly because of this government that is impacting the way that you do your work in managing the volume of folks that may be looking for asylum.
So I think what everyone needs to understand is as LGBTQ plus individuals, we will always try to find a way to seek safety. And we will find a way to seek safety safely and legally. So even though there is this narrative that, people are entering the country illegally and they can't seek asylum, there is a way to enter the country legally and people are still submitting asylum cases. Asylum cases are still being granted. It's just the narrative that's out there. I also want people to understand that there is now a heightened sense of fear. So even though individuals are still submitting applications for asylum, the support is no longer there. A lot of organizations aren't around anymore. Funding has been cut. So you find that organizations like Rainbow Railroad and others that are doing the work are severely strained, but we are doing what we can with what we have and with the support of volunteers like Alicia to help ensure that asylum seekers that are entering the country are able to have support. We've understood that the hardest part of relocation is actually getting to the new place and the first 3 to 6 months. And that's why we're wanting to support individuals during this time. I think I can also add to fundraising is also hard. And we also always are trying to raise more funds to support more newcomers. You don't necessarily need the money because as of right now, as an organization, we're able to provide the funding to the newcomers. We need more volunteers to help form groups for us to be able to help more newcomers. Drew, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yes, I will add. Sorry, I was responding to something in the chat. Yes, in terms of who is making new asylum claims, I think there's a misperception that no one is making asylum claims and all the legal clinics have just packed up shop and gone home, and that is very much not the case. There are many people who had other forms of relief, like temporary protected status, that were ripped away from them cruelly, to be honest, by this administration. And so people have had to scramble to find other forms of relief that they might be eligible for. So some of our clients fall into that bucket. Other people, you know, come to the US on vacation on a tourist visa and then get outed while they're here, or a photo gets shared around their community and then they can't go back. We've worked with a number of students who that happens to, who are here for extended periods of time on tourist visas, or sorry, on student visas. And then, as they're joining clubs at their school, maybe they decide they want to join the LGBTQ club, and then maybe their parents find out, and then maybe their parents tell them, don't come back over the break, we're cutting you off and we're cutting off all financial support. We're actually working with a student in the Bay right now who that happened to, who was looking at potentially being homeless and without any resources in the US because his financial aid was cut off, meaning he wasn't going to have access to student housing. Thankfully, he's now with a community support team. He's found other housing. He's getting re-enrolled in classes. He's having a great life, and we're really happy with him and with the team that's been working with him. Yeah, Alicia, if I can ask you a question. There's, you and I work together on this work, and there have been many moments of like frustration or things that were hard. Can you just talk about, the real moments of like what were some of the challenging things that you had to work through and how you got through them?
Yeah, well, kind of based on the question you guys were just talking about the different immigration changes. I mean, it really depends on where you're coming from. In Chicago, as you all might know, we had some pretty intense immigration enforcement going on last fall. And that created a great amount of fear for everyone. Our newcomers that we help, but also just the entire community. Where was it safe to go? Is it safe to go out of the house? Do you not want to go to this big community event because there might be ICE there? And so that's a challenge for them. And so it is important for us to be aware of what is going on. And to be in touch with the different immigration groups. I attend a monthly briefing that the city puts on about immigration to keep me up to date on what's happening, because there's some serious impacts on our newcomers if we don't know what's going on and what's the best way to keep them safe. So that is something I think that you need to be kept aware of in your own community. So you can answer their questions, but then you can also guide them when it comes to issues of safety. And then, I mean, challenges, obviously, for us, the most recent challenge is our newcomer got detained by ICE, and due to the harsh conditions of the jail she was in, chose to go back home. So she went back home to Honduras. I'm actually going there May 10th. I'm very excited to take her things and to just give her a big hug and let her know we still care about her. And hopefully she can try to make it out again. But that has obviously been very challenging when maybe things don't go the way that everybody hopes that they will go. Kind of how do you deal with your own emotions about that? How do you continue to try to help from afar. That can all be challenging, and that's definitely been the most challenging for us. Um, and the other thing I wanted to say is, at least here in Chicago, I mean, the border is basically closed, so there's no more buses of migrants coming to Chicago. There aren't this huge influx of people just arriving. So the people could be here already for a while when they get assigned to your team. So everybody's going to be different at a different place on their journey of arrival. So that's something else to keep in mind. Not everybody is going to have the same needs. Some of them might already have a job. Some of them might have been taking public transit here for a year already and already know how to do that. So it depends on where they are in their journey, that can be very different. When we helped the refugee in 2024, that's different because you basically pick them up from the airport and they're freshly arriving, and so there you have to really start from square one. But now a lot of the people have been here for a while, so it changes kind of what you need to do and how you need to best care for them.
Yeah, and if I can add to what Alicia said, I have to give her team so much credit because they really sort of exemplify this human first approach that meeting the person where they're at, what do you need help with, how can we be of assistance? And especially helping someone in detention. Detention is really miserable for especially for LGBTQ people. So just having contact with someone on the outside, and Alicia and her team were in touch with this person while she was detained pretty much every day, every other day, and that makes such a difference. Otherwise, you don't talk to anyone. Guards can be mean to you, other detainees can be mean to you. A lot of these immigration civil detention facilities are mixed with criminal jails. And so there are just like all sorts of people all together who are not happy, and that can be super challenging. We also get referrals of people who are in detention and who need a community support team once they are released, who otherwise would have nowhere else to go. So without a community support team, those attorneys would not submit a request for release because there would be nowhere to tell the judge that this person's going to live when they get released. And so this has been extremely valuable for folks in those cases. And to someone's earlier point about case compositions, case sizes, a lot of our client cases are one or two people, whereas like most other immigrant serving and refugee serving organizations are working with families. Most queer and trans people are fleeing persecution alone. Because often their families are their first and their worst bullies. And then local communities, religious communities are often targeting them, as do like the state security authorities in their home countries. So usually people are fleeing on their own, sometimes with a partner, or we've seen a lot of cases of queer women who have children from prior relationships. That's a case pattern that we've seen as well. But this is why our program is especially effective, because otherwise these people are often alone and quite lonely and disconnected.
Yeah, just to add to that, when she was in detention, she would get released from the room at 8:30 at night to be able to use the phone. So I knew that every night between 8:30 and 9, she would call. And I'd be at meetings or at dinners and my phone would ring and I'd be like, gotta go. That's my 8:30 call. But it meant so much to her to just have somebody to talk to. And she was in a jail, not a detention center, because ICE contracts out with local jails in the middle of Missouri, where everybody in the jail, basically 90% of the people there were white English speaking people who had committed crimes, and none of the staff spoke Spanish, which that should be a prerequisite for getting a nice contract. But so she didn't speak the language. The migrants there were very much the minority and therefore bullied by a lot of the white women in the jail. And so there was all kinds of reasons why it was a horrible experience for her. And being able to have people on the outside, we kept her phone account full and her commissary account full, so she could buy what she wanted, she could talk to whoever she wanted, and just really helped, I think, make it a little bit more bearable to be there. So yeah, that was helpful to be able to do that for her.
Yeah, the word lifeline cannot be used like strongly enough for what you all did. So thank you.
Thank you. Alicia, I have one final question. There are instances where we have people that are on the fence of wanting to do the volunteering, of wanting to support asylum seekers. If you could say anything to anyone that's on the fence right now, what would that be?
Um, First of all, I would say, you've got a community behind you. This isn't something that you have to do alone. Even your own little CST team is not alone. If you really get to know your community, there are all kinds of resources and people who want to help. So even though it may seem like a big commitment, if you're here, you're probably already involved in your community. And to really take advantage of all those different resources that you have to take care of that person. And I'm a big believer in building relationships with the people you're trying to help. Once you get to know somebody, your desire to help just grows immensely because you have a relationship. There is a face. You're not just donating, money or, writing your legislature about different policies, which all of those things are important too. But this is a way for you to directly help another person. It's that whole starfish story. You may not be able to save all the starships on the beach, but that one that you throw back in, you help that one, and that makes a huge difference for them. And again, for yourself, that making that connection with another human being in that way is just hugely gratifying as a volunteer.
Thank you so
And Kendra,
much.
sorry, I saw one more question in the chat that I meant to answer. Someone just asked about whether it's likely that people will still win cases based on sexual orientation or gender identity in immigration court. This is like one of the few places where it's helpful to be LGBTQ because the law on LGBTQ persecution in asylum law is pretty clear. Like most queer persecution is pretty squarely in the definition of persecution for asylum purposes. People are being harmed, often physically, for attributes that they cannot control, for being members of a particular social group, the queer and trans community. And it's often by state actors or actors that the state is not interested in controlling. And often the hostility is so widespread in their home countries that there's nowhere else they can go, which is most of the prongs of the asylum definition. So what you will often see in immigration court is that the ICE attorneys won't actually try to win the legal argument. They will instead try to say that the LGBTQ person is not credible so that they don't have to consider any of the legal arguments. When I was an attorney, I saw this many times. They would try to say that people were lying about being gay, no matter how much evidence we provided. And our clients would often be in a catch-22. So if they didn't have enough evidence showing that they were queer, why would they believe them? But if they have too much, it's also suspicious. So it was a little bit of a Goldilocks problem where you need to have the right amount of data. I did have an ICE attorney also ask my client once, "Oh, you lived in Philly?" We'll use an example. "Name 5 gay bars in Philly." Extremely infuriating. This was like, and the person was like, "Wait, what? What are you asking me in immigration court? You're asking me to name gay bars?" Um, so, and Kendra, I don't know if you just like want to talk at all about your own experience with the system and like how dehumanizing it can be.
Yeah, so I arrived in the US 10 years ago. In January was 10 years, and it literally took me 9.5 years to have my first asylum interview. That lasted close to 6 hours. I came out traumatized, and they're like, okay, you'll get a response in the mail. The response I got in the mail was being called to a second interview. That was more horrendous and lasted close to 5 hours this time. And I just want to say, it took them a while, but I did get approval. It's currently still at a standstill because, of course, they approve it and then they put a ban on all asylum. So we'll see what happens. But here we are. I have heard stories of other individuals that have submitted their asylum cases and have gotten their cases approved. It's just ensuring that you have a supportive attorney in the event that, they can reach out to us at Rainbow Railroad. We are able to provide country condition documentation to help support a lot of these asylum cases for LGBTQI plus individuals.
Yeah, this is exactly the kind of information that I think is important for people to know. This work is definitely an uphill battle. It's something that requires so much systemic change on the end of our immigration policy. And just as much as we need communities to be involved in the work of creating these teams to be able to help, asylum seekers be able to integrate and thrive here in the United States. This for a lot of folks, this is also an important reminder of the advocacy that we need for more compassionate systems of immigration, for ones that help make it easier for folks to be able to find legal status here, and to not to dehumanize people by detaining them, by deporting them out of the country, and doing what they're doing to really make lives for people much more difficult than it needs to be. And that's why we appreciate the work of Kendra, Drew, Alicia, and Rainbow Railroad for what you're doing to really help so many people around the country feel like they can be a part of the American fabric in this case. But that it's also an important reminder that all of us are trying to do our part to make sure that the laws of the land, the systems of the land are actually reflecting the compassion that the people deserve. And I want to be able to thank you all so much for the opportunity to learn about your work. Alicia, especially from you and the ways you're doing that on the ground. We really appreciate getting to hear your story and your contributions. Um, and we wish you the best of luck on your trip. That sounds like a wonderful opportunity to remind someone of how valuable they are, even though they went through such a terrible experience. And yes, thank you so much to everyone who joined for the call today. We look forward to having more conversations like this at the task force and at the Interfaith Center. We wish you all the best and hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.